The war was lost, until ruthless humans took over. The Growa bioship, a grotesque fusion of chitin and sinew, tore through the human frigate's hull like paper. Alarms shrieked, klaxons blared, and the screams of dying crewmen echoed through the rapidly depressurizing corridors. On the bridge, Commander Eva Rostova, blood streaming from a gash on her forehead, watched in horror as a Growa boarding party, all snapping mandibles and razor-sharp claws, burst onto the deck. They moved with terrifying speed, tearing through her remaining security detail. Eva raised her energy pistol, but it was too late. A massive Growa warrior, its multi-jointed limbs ending in grotesque blades, lunged, and with a sickening crunch, her world went black. The last thing she saw was its segmented maw opening, revealing rows of needle-like teeth, as it prepared to consume her. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Whispers of Time channel. Before we start, I hope you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so that you receive all the new content, and also share the story with your friends so it reaches as many people as possible. And if you have a story, write it in the comments. Maybe we'll choose one to narrate in the next video. Let's start the story. Pay attention, because there's a small detail that might change your entire perspective and awareness of life. The war was no longer a battle for victory. It was a desperate scramble for survival, plain and simple. In the sprawling chamber of the Galactic Council, representatives of the Coalition's once mighty species just sat there in defeated silence. Can you imagine the holographic display in the center of the room? Grim figures, man. Countless fleets annihilated, entire star systems just gone, consumed by the relentless advance of the Growa Swarm. High Chancellor D'vac of the Alyans, a wiry figure with luminous blue-tinted skin, finally got up from his seat. His voice actually trembled as he addressed the council. Our defenses are shattered. The Growa high fleets have breached the Omega Line. If they take Sari's Prime, the heart of our alliance will fall within days. We are out of time. Man, the murmurs of fear and resignation just spread through that chamber like wildfire. The Growa, those biomechanical monstrosities driven by a hive mind, had proven unstoppable. They devoured everything in their path, consuming resources and populations to fuel their endless war machine. Ambassador Kravic of the Rinkai, his 8 limbs coiled tightly in frustration, practically spat venomous words. This war was doomed the moment we underestimated their swarm. Our strategies have failed. Our armies are decimated. What more can we do? What do you think, at that moment, what should they have done? Then, a shadow moved at the edge of the chamber. All eyes turned as a human figure stepped forward, his boots echoing against the polished obsidian floor. War Commander Darius James, a man forged by war, stood tall and unflinching. His presence was such a stark contrast to the despair in the room, it was almost jarring. Broad-shouldered and clad in a black tactical suit, his piercing gray eyes just seemed to cut right through the haze of hopelessness. Your strategies failed, James said, his voice low and measured, because you've been fighting this war as if your enemy follows rules. The Growa don't negotiate. They don't retreat. And they don't care about your principles. They only understand dominance and annihilation. If you want to win, you need to fight like them. Without mercy. The room just erupted in protest. Shouts of outrage filled the air, accusing James of barbarism and recklessness. High Chancellor D'vac raised a hand to silence the chamber, his glowing eyes narrowing as he regarded the human commander. James, D'vac said, his tone. Well, it was something. I see humanity has provided little more than token support since the war began. Your species is known for its ferocity, yes, but this conflict demands strategy, not brute force. Why should we listen to you now? James stepped closer to the holographic display, the light illuminating the sharp angles of his face. He manipulated the interface, bringing up a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red tendrils, representing the Growa swarm, spread like a virus, engulfing allied territories. Because you're losing, James said bluntly. And if you keep clinging to your outdated tactics, you'll all be extinct within weeks. He zoomed in on Sari's Prime, highlighting its strategic importance. This is your last chance. Sari's is more than a planet, it's the only gateway to your core worlds. Lose it, and the Growa will steamroll through your systems. You need a counter-offensive, not another retreat. And what exactly do you propose? Demanded Kravic, his mandibles clicking in skepticism. James's expression hardened. Let humanity lead. The room fell silent. The idea was unthinkable, truly. For decades, humans had been regarded as unpredictable newcomers to the galactic stage, too volatile and unrefined for positions of true power. To entrust them with the Coalition's survival was a gamble most present were unwilling to take. You're asking us to surrender our command to a species known for its barbarity, scoffed Minister Phalus of the Zeran, her golden feathers bristling. James turned to her, his voice like steel. I'm not asking. I'm offering a choice. Step aside and let us do what you can't, or watch your people be consumed by the swarm. High Chancellor D'vac studied James, his luminous eyes betraying a flicker of hope and desperation. And what guarantee do we have that your methods will work? James's jaw tightened, and for a moment, the weight of his words seemed to rest heavily on his shoulders. You don't, he admitted. But I guarantee one thing, we won't go down quietly. Humans don't lose wars. We adapt, we endure, and we strike harder than anyone expects. Give me command, and I'll give you a fighting chance. The chamber erupted again, this time with a mix of anger and hesitant agreement. The debate raged, but the clock was ticking, and the Growlithe were closing in. Finally, D'vac raised his voice above the din. Enough, he said, his tone resolute. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Commander James, humanity will take the lead. But know this, if you fail, the blood of the galaxy will be on your hands. James nodded, his expression unreadable. Understood. As the meeting adjourned, James strode out of the chamber, his mind already calculating the next move. The war was far from over, but for the first time in months, he felt the tide begin to shift. Humanity had been underestimated for too long, and that, James thought grimly, was about to change. The Coalition's sprawling war room was a chaotic fusion of cultures. Holographic displays flickered, showcasing fleets, planetary systems, and enemy formations. Alien officers conferred in hushed tones, their myriad forms reflecting the diversity of the galaxy. At the center of it all stood Commander Darius James, his presence commanding attention like a gravitational force. Your fleets are scattered and disorganized, James said, pointing to the hologram of the Sari system. Your defensive lines are riddled with gaps, and you waste precious resources protecting planets already lost. That ends now. His tone brooked no argument. The gathered Coalition officers exchanged uneasy glances, their discomfort palpable. Beside James stood Major Victor Brandt, his towering frame and steely gaze adding weight to every word his commander spoke. Where James exuded a cold, calculating authority, Brandt embodied raw, unyielding strength. We're consolidating your forces, James continued, his gray eyes scanning the room. Effective immediately, all ships, troops, and supplies fall under human command. Any objections? Ambassador Kravic's mandibles clicked in irritation. Objections, Commander James? You demand we entrust our armies to a species that has yet to prove itself on this scale. Your arrogance, James cut him off, his voice like a blade. Arrogance is wasting time debating when the enemy is at your doorstep. I'm not here to win your trust. I'm here to win this war. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the hum of the holograms. Finally, High Chancellor D'vac nodded, reluctantly. Proceed, Commander. James wasted no time. Under his direction, the Coalition forces were reshaped with ruthless efficiency. Alien officers bristled at the humans' uncompromising methods, but they couldn't deny the results. Major Brandt oversaw the transformation, implementing grueling drills and combat simulations designed to break old habits and forge a unified fighting force. Brandt's voice echoed across the training grounds as he addressed a mixed group of soldiers, Blan KY, Vin Ki, hulking Zeran, and wiry Etherians. You think the Growlithe care about your traditions? Your pride? They don't. They'll rip you apart unless you fight like your life depends on it. Because it does. The soldiers hesitated, unused to such bluntness. Brandt's piercing gaze swept over them, and he barked, Form up! Move like you mean it! The training was brutal. Soldiers collapsed under the weight of human-designed exosuits, their bodies unused to the strain. Simulated battles tested their resolve, with human instructors offering no reprieve for mistakes. Slowly, grudgingly, the alien recruits adapted, their initial resentment giving way to grudging respect. James's strategies were no less unforgiving. The Coalition's first operation under human command was a high-risk strike on a Growlithe supply depot deep within enemy territory. Alien leaders protested, deeming it a suicide mission, but James was resolute. "We hit them where it hurts," James said, gesturing to the hologram. "This depot feeds their fleets. Destroy it, and we cripple their advance on Saris." The assault was swift and devastating. Using cloaked ships and precision strikes, the Coalition forces overwhelmed the depot's defenses. Human and alien troops fought side by side, their combined efforts delivering a crushing blow to the Growlithe supply lines. The victory came at a cost. Casualties were high, and the depot's destruction left a smoldering scar on the planet's surface. As the troops regrouped, an alien officer approached James, his expression a mixture of awe and accusation. "You call this a victory?" the officer said, gesturing to the fallen. "Dozens of lives lost. Entire cities leveled." James met his gaze, unflinching. "A victory is measured by what you gain, not what you lose. Those lives bought us time and leverage. The Growlithe feel pain now. That's how we win." Back at the Coalition headquarters, the tensions boiled over. Council members accused James of barbarism, their voices rising in heated debate. "You humans fight like savages," Minister Phalus exclaimed, her golden feathers quivering. "You sacrifice lives as if they mean nothing." James leaned forward, his gaze icy. "You think this war can be won with diplomacy? With hesitation? The Growlithe aren't monsters because they're strong. They're monsters because they exploit your weakness. We'll beat them because we're willing to do what you won't." Major Brandt, standing at his commander's side, added, "You don't win a war by playing nice. You win by making the enemy afraid to face you." The council fell silent, the weight of the human words settling heavily on them. Despite the mounting resistance to James's methods, the results were undeniable. The Coalition began to see progress for the first time in months. Growlithe fleets hesitated where they once advanced without pause, forced to reconsider their tactics in the face of the Coalition's newfound ruthlessness. In the quiet moments between battles, James stood alone, staring at the stars beyond the command ship's viewport. He didn't flinch from the sacrifices he'd made, but the weight of them bore heavily on his soul. Brandt approached, his tone softer than usual. "You think they'll ever understand, Darius?" James didn't look away from the stars. "They don't need to understand. They just need to survive." As the command ship hummed with preparations for the next operation, James steeled himself. The war was far from over, but the tide was turning. Humanity's approach, brutal as it was, had proven one thing: survival demanded ruthlessness. The bridge of the Coalition's flagship, Vanguard's Wrath, was alive with activity. Holographic displays cast a dim blue glow over the gathered officers, their faces set with grim determination. At the center of the chaos stood Commander Darius James, his gaze locked on the star map projected before him. Every detail, every vector, was a step in his unfolding plan, a plan that, if successful, would strike at the heart of the Growlithe's high fleets. "Status report," James commanded, his voice cutting through the hum of machinery and chatter. Major Victor Brandt stepped forward, his imposing figure casting a shadow over the consoles. "Fleet mobilization is at 80%, sir. Our forces are holding the Epsilon corridor, but reports indicate heavy resistance. The Growlithe are reinforcing faster than anticipated." James nodded, his mind racing. The Epsilon corridor was the Coalition's only pathway to the Kalon Rift, a strategic position critical to crippling the Growlithe supply chain. Losing it wasn't an option. "Push them harder," James said, his tone unwavering. "Deploy the decimated-class frigates as a spearhead. We break their line now, or not at all." The plan was audacious, bordering on reckless, but it embodied everything James believed in: calculated aggression and relentless pressure. The Growlithe had never encountered an enemy willing to risk so much, and James intended to use that to his advantage. The next hours were a blur of battle reports and shifting strategies. The Coalition forces engaged the Growlithe in a brutal conflict, their fleets maneuvering through the narrow corridor with surgical precision. James's commands were precise, his tactics ruthless. When the Growlithe tried to flank the Coalition ships, James ordered a feint that lured the enemy into a trap. The resulting ambush obliterated 2 Hive carriers, leaving the Growlithe forces in disarray. Despite the victory, the cost was staggering. The bridge fell silent as the casualty reports came in. James's expression remained stoic, but the tension in his jaw betrayed the weight of his decisions. "Commander," Lieutenant Elias Carter spoke hesitantly, his youthful face pale. "Sector 4 reports over 60% losses. They're requesting reinforcements." James's gaze shifted to the young officer, his voice measured. "There are no reinforcements." "But, sir," Carter began, his voice tinged with disbelief. "They hold the line," James repeated, his tone brooking no argument. "Their sacrifice ensures we succeed. We honor them by finishing the mission." The young lieutenant fell silent, his idealism visibly shaken. Brandt stepped beside him, a hand on his shoulder. "This isn't about heroics, kid. It's about survival. James is making the hard calls so the rest of us have a chance to fight another day." The turning point came when the Coalition fleet reached the Kalon Rift. The gravitational anomalies in the region made it treacherous, but James had planned for every contingency. Deploying advanced human-designed drone swarms, he disrupted the Growlithe's hive-mind coordination, sowing chaos among their forces. The battle reached its crescendo as the Coalition's flagship fired its main cannon, a weapon of human ingenuity capable of piercing even the Growlithe's bioarmor. The blast tore through the enemy's command carrier, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. The Growlithe forces faltered, their cohesion crumbling without centralized command. Cheers erupted across the Coalition fleet as the enemy retreated, leaving behind the debris of their once imposing armada. The Kalon Rift was secure, and with it, a decisive victory. Yet, on the bridge of the Vanguard's wrath, the celebration was muted. James stood silently, his eyes fixed on the display of the battlefield. "We did it," Brandt said, his voice carrying a rare note of triumph. "For now," James replied, his tone grim. "The Growlithe don't give up. This is just the beginning." In the aftermath, tensions among the Coalition leadership reached a boiling point. While the victory had proven humanity's effectiveness, it also highlighted their unrelenting brutality. During the debriefing, Ambassador Kravic confronted James. "Your methods are effective, Commander, but at what cost? Entire sectors left undefended, thousands of lives lost. How do you justify this?" James's gaze was icy. "I don't need to justify survival. This war isn't about your comfort or pride. It's about ensuring there's something left of this galaxy when it's over." Kravic's mandibles clicked in frustration, but he said nothing further. The silence was broken by High Chancellor D'vac, who addressed the room with measured authority. "Commander James's methods may be harsh," D'vac said, "but we cannot deny their results. The Kalon Rift is ours. We have gained the first true victory in this war, and for that, we owe humanity our gratitude." As the council adjourned, James lingered in the war room, his thoughts heavy. Brandt approached, his usual confidence tempered by concern. "You're pushing them hard, Darius," he said. "Even the humans are starting to feel it." James didn't look up from the holographic display. "They'll feel it a lot more if we lose." Brandt nodded, his respect for his commander unshaken. "Just make sure you don't burn yourself out in the process." James allowed himself a rare, fleeting smile. "Not until the swarm is ashes." The tide of the war had turned, but the weight of every decision bore heavily on James's shoulders. With the Coalition's trust hanging by a thread, he knew the battles ahead would demand even greater sacrifices. The question was whether the galaxy, and James himself, could endure them. The Coalition's War Council gathered in the shadow of desperation. Holographic projections of the galaxy displayed red swaths of Growlithe-controlled territories, encroaching on the Coalition's last bastions. At the center of the room, Commander Darius James stood unmoving, his face carved from stone. "We're out of time," High Chancellor D'vac announced, his voice heavy with resignation. "The Growlithe fleet moves to encircle Epsilon Prime. If it falls, our resistance will collapse." Murmurs of defeat spread through the room, the alien leaders visibly wilting under the weight of inevitable annihilation. James let the silence linger before he stepped forward, his voice sharp and commanding. "No," he said. "They've made a mistake. They're concentrating everything on Epsilon Prime, thinking we'll crumble. We don't crumble. We break them. Ambassador Kravic clicked his mandibles in irritation. Your confidence is misplaced, Commander. We've thrown everything at the Growlithe and gained inches at best. What can you possibly propose that we haven't already tried? James activated a holographic map, the image shifting to the Growlithe fleet's formation. Humanity has a weapon we haven't used yet, our fury. The council erupted in protests and skepticism, but James raised his voice over the clamor. We're not playing defense anymore. This time, we hit them head-on with everything we've got. No retreat. No hesitation. We burn their fleets, their worlds, their very will to fight. They'll learn what it means to face humanity. The room fell silent. Major Victor Brandt, ever James's stalwart supporter, stepped forward. The commander's right. The Growlithe fight like a swarm, relentless, overwhelming. But they've never faced an enemy willing to match their brutality, until now. Though apprehensive, the council reluctantly agreed. James's plan was unprecedented, a direct assault on the Growlithe's primary Hive World Nexus. It was a desperate gamble, but one that promised to turn the war's tide permanently. The fleet mobilized with grim determination. On board the Vanguard's Wrath, James addressed the coalition forces, his voice carried through every ship, reaching every soldier, pilot, and crew member. This is it, James began, the battle that decides everything. The Growlithe think they're unstoppable, that their numbers and savagery make them invincible. But they've never faced us, united, unyielding. Today, we show them what it means to fight for survival. Today, we remind them why humanity doesn't back down. The response was a thunderous roar, reverberating through the fleet. The assault on Nexus was chaos incarnate. The Growlithe swarmed the coalition fleet with overwhelming numbers, their bioships clashing against human-designed dreadnoughts and alien cruisers. Explosions lit up the void as the battle unfolded in brutal intensity. James coordinated the assault with precision, his commands weaving the coalition forces into a single, cohesive weapon. Major Brandt led the ground assault, his squad plunging into the thick of the Hive World's defenses. Move! Move! Brandt barked, his voice cutting through the cacophony of battle. His soldiers, a mix of human and alien troops, followed without hesitation, their trust in him absolute. They carved a path through the Growlithe hordes, their unity and determination unmatched. Above, the fleet executed James's most daring maneuver, the deployment of the Aegis protocol. Human engineers had designed the experimental weapon as a last resort. It unleashed a massive, localized EMP burst, disabling Growlithe bioships and turning the tide of the battle. As the Growlithe's defenses faltered, James pressed the advantage. All units, focus fire on their command clusters. Cut off their hive mind coordination. The coalition forces struck with relentless ferocity. Nexus, once a symbol of Growlithe dominance, became a battlefield of devastation. Human ingenuity and alien resilience combined to deliver a blow the Growlithe hadn't anticipated. Despite the overwhelming odds, James's strategy bore fruit. The Growlithe fleets began to retreat, their forces in disarray. But the victory came at a cost. The coalition's losses were staggering, their fleets and armies pushed to the brink. On the surface of Nexus, Brandt and his squad fought their way to the planet's core, where the Growlithe hive mind nexus pulsed with sinister energy. This is it, Brandt shouted, planting the final charges on the structure. Fall back. The detonation obliterated the nexus in a blinding explosion, severing the Growlithe's hive mind connection and throwing their forces into chaos. As the coalition forces regrouped, the once dominant swarm became a shadow of its former self. Back aboard the Vanguard's Wrath, James stood amidst the aftermath of the battle. The war was not yet over, but for the first time, the Growlithe had been dealt a decisive blow. The coalition, forged in the crucible of humanity's ruthless determination, stood stronger than ever. Major Brandt approached, his armor scorched and battered. We did it, Darius. James nodded, his gaze fixed on the ruins of Nexus displayed on the screen. We showed them what we're capable of. But this isn't the end. The Growlithe will regroup. They always do. Brandt smirked, his confidence unshaken. Then we'll be ready. Whatever it takes. James allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. Humanity's fury had turned the tide, and the coalition was no longer a fractured alliance, but a force to be reckoned with. As the fleet prepared for the next phase of the war, one truth remained clear. Survival demanded not just unity, but unrelenting resolve. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and would not make that mistake again. And with that, we have reached the end of the story, but stories don't end here. If you like the story, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel so you receive all the new content. And if you have an opinion or something that caught your attention, leave a comment and let's discuss together. I'm waiting for your opinions, and see you in the next story. Bye.